I always knew I was the family's afterthought, the just-in-case child my parents never really planned for, never celebrated, and certainly never respected. But I didn't know they were capable of abandoning me like garbage until the night they locked me in a $29 a night motel on the edge of nowhere, with no phone, no wallet, and no clue what was coming next. Please subscribe to our channel and tell us in comments from where are you watching this video. We were supposed to be on a family road trip, a rare gesture from my parents that had seemed too good to be true from the start. They said we'd spend a week reconnecting. But by day 2, my sister Amber had claimed the front seat, the best food, the playlists, and all of their attention, while I had become the designated photographer, luggage hauler, and invisible extra. Every eye roll I gave or sentence I spoke was met with glares or mockery. "You need to stop sulking and be useful," Mom snapped as I tried to ask why we weren't stopping for my bathroom break, but had pulled over twice for Amber's coffee cravings. When we arrived at the dingy motel, I assumed it was just for a night, but something felt off. My parents were whispering outside the car. Amber kept giggling and glancing at me through the rearview mirror. Then, Dad tossed me a crumpled bill. "There, this should be enough for water or whatever. We're heading back into town for dinner with Amber's friend." I blinked. "What? You're leaving me here?" Mom didn't even look back. "You're almost an adult. Consider it a test. Let's see how you survive." Then they left. Just like that. Their car's taillights vanished into the dusk. The motel room was barely livable. No Wi-Fi, flickering lights, and the lock felt like it could break with one strong shove. I checked my bag. Empty. No charger, no cash, no ID. My phone was missing. I panicked. I pounded on the door, shouted, cried. Nothing. No one answered. That night, I curled up on the bed, listening to sirens wailing faintly in the distance and praying nothing worse would happen. My sister had texted me earlier that day, asking if I could take a photo of her new dress for her socials. Now, she was silent. My parents? Ghosted. But something in me shifted. I wasn't just scared, I was furious, humiliated, and exhausted from being their backup plan, their scapegoat, their non-priority. The next morning, I walked to a nearby diner and begged to use their landline. After a few polite words and a few tears, the elderly manager, Clara, let me borrow it. Not to call my parents, but to call my lawyer. Yes, my lawyer. What my parents had forgotten, or maybe never cared to remember, was that a year ago, my grandmother had quietly left me a trust fund in my own name. One they couldn't touch. One I'd kept secret. Because while my parents were busy playing favorites with Amber, Grandma had been the only one who saw my worth. And along with the fund, I had been given emergency banking access. Access that I now used to freeze every shared account they depended on. Rent, cards, savings, locked. And it was only the beginning. By the time I left that rundown motel 2 days later, I wasn't the same girl they'd locked inside it. I wasn't the desperate, invisible daughter hoping they'd finally see me. I was done begging for space at a table I built for them. The funds Grandma left me weren't just sitting there. For the past year, I had been investing, building credit, and working with a discreet but powerful financial advisor. My parents didn't know that I had bought a share in the very credit union they used, meaning I could freeze anything under my name or shared ownership. The moment the lock went on their bank accounts, the chaos started. At first, I didn't hear from them directly, but Amber messaged me, of course not to ask if I was okay, but to say, "Did you do something to Mom and Dad's cards? We're stuck at a gas station. This isn't funny." I didn't respond. I waited. 5 hours later, I got a voicemail from my dad. "Listen, whatever game you're playing, stop it. We were just teaching you some independence. You're overreacting. Call me back." Oh, so now I was worth a call? I didn't return it. Instead, I sent an email. Cold, professional, and with a clause. I wrote, "You taught me how to survive, remember. Let's see how you do without access to the money you've taken for granted. I'm invoking full control of all joint assets tied to Grandma's estate. And yes, the lawyer has been notified." It was time they learned what survival really looked like. Meanwhile, I checked into a high-rise suite downtown, a far cry from the bug-infested motel they left me to rot in. The irony? I used their favorite luxury credit card to cover the deposit, one still linked to an account under my authority. The look on the front desk clerk's face when he greeted me as Miss Westwood and offered champagne was a moment I'll never forget. They had left me with humiliation. I was returning silence, strategy, and a carefully planned war. That week, I learned through a friend that my parents had been trying to use cash to get by. My dad had pawned his watch. Mom was calling relatives. Amber had been whining on Instagram about being financially attacked by jealous family. I screenshotted every post. For later. But it wasn't just about revenge. I wanted clarity. I wanted truth. I wanted the full picture of how disposable they believed I was. So I called Uncle Raymond, Grandma's brother. He hesitated at first, but eventually opened up. Your mom. She always said she didn't plan for 2 kids. Said you were a mistake, but your grandma adored you. She said you had quiet strength they never bothered to see. That's why she left it all to you. I broke down, not because I was sad, but because I felt seen. And suddenly, everything clicked. The years they made me sleep on the couch during vacations while Amber got the bed, the way they cut me out of family photos, the time they forgot my birthday but threw Amber a yacht party. Every moment I thought I was being too sensitive. I wasn't. I was being erased. Not anymore. The final nail came when I called the bank and transferred the deed of the family home. Yes, Grandma's old house my parents were living in rent-free, into my name. It was legally mine now, and I wasn't letting them stay there without consequences. I had 30-day eviction notices drafted, not as a tantrum, as a message. You left me alone in the dark. Let's see how you like finding your way without a roof handed to you. But before I sent them, I had one more thing to do. I booked a reservation at their favorite restaurant, under their name. When they showed up expecting a free meal and special treatment, the hostess looked confused. I'm sorry, Mr. and Mrs. Westwood. The bill's already covered. By your daughter. She left a note. They were handed a sleek white envelope. Inside it read, Lesson learned yet? Their faces, I was told by the server, went pale, and the story wasn't even over yet. I never planned to destroy them. I only wanted peace, respect, maybe even an apology. But after years of humiliation, silence became my sharpest weapon, and independence became my loudest revenge. 30 days passed like clockwork. The eviction notice I had sent to the family home, my grandmother's house, wasn't just paper. It was history rewriting itself. They thought it was a bluff, until the locksmith arrived. Mom called me first, sobbing. You can't be serious. This house is your sister's childhood home. I didn't flinch. It's mine, legally and emotionally. It was Grandma's, and she left it to the granddaughter who sat with her when she was sick, not the one who asked if she could sell her jewelry while she was still alive. They were stunned, speechless. For once, there was no snarky comeback, no gaslighting retort, no laugh at my expense. Then came the public unraveling. Amber tried to rally people online, posting stories of how I'd betrayed the family. But people remembered how she once shared a TikTok joking about locking me in a motel as a lesson in humility. That video resurfaced, and the comments weren't kind. This aged like milk. So your sister bought the house you took for granted? Iconic. She's not evil. She's evolved. I wasn't just reclaiming space. I was reclaiming narrative. At work, I flourished. Turns out, the same quiet endurance they mocked in me made me exceptional. I got promoted, twice. In the company I helped grow, we acquired the same vendor company my father once begged to contract with when he was in business. He showed up to the pitch meeting thinking I'd forgotten. He stood there, folder trembling in hand, trying to win a deal. Until he saw me walk into the boardroom. He blinked. I smiled. You're running this? I own this. The silence was delicious. I didn't reject the proposal. I didn't raise my voice. I simply slid the contract back to him, unsigned. We value partnerships built on trust, dignity, and accountability. Unfortunately, I can't say I've ever received any of those from you." And I left the room. Amber, now jobless after an online scandal, called a few weeks later. Not to apologize, but to negotiate. "Look, I know we've had issues, but can you loan me some money, just until I get back on my feet?" "Amber," I said calmly, "you once told people I wasn't even a real sibling, that I was a glorified house pet with emotions. Why would I help you now?" "Because we're family," she snapped. "Exactly. That's why I won't destroy you, but I won't save you either." Click. I moved into Grandma's house a month later, not because I needed it, but because I wanted to breathe in the walls that once held the only unconditional love I ever knew. I restored the garden she used to keep. I found her old journals. In one, she wrote, "They never deserved her, but one day she'll bloom so wildly they'll wish they'd planted her with care." I cried that night, not from pain, but from release. Months later, I hosted a dinner at the same motel-turned-boutique lounge that I had been locked in. I invited my colleagues, friends, and a few family members who had stood by me silently over the years. Not my parents, not Amber. As dessert was served, a young waiter came to me and whispered, "There's a couple outside, older. Said they're your parents. They look tired." I didn't flinch. "Tell them the owner is too busy living to welcome ghosts." He nodded, and I returned to the table. Laughter, clinking glasses, stories of resilience and growth filled the room. I realized in that moment I had survived not just that night in the motel, but decades of being forgotten, ignored, treated like backup. And I hadn't just survived, I'd flourished. Their bank cards stayed frozen, but my heart, free, forever. Please subscribe to our channel and tell us in comments from where are you watching this video.